Hello everybody, and welcome back to NC Thrills. And I saw that you guys really liked my picks for every Six Flags park, and I think now I'm going to do the same thing for the SeaWorld chain and the Hershey chain, so stay tuned for those videos. But right now I'm going to do a new series, and it is called Versus, where I put these two parks head to head and see which one's better, and I use a completely scientific route. Like, I have a method that's completely scientific and works 100% of the time and is not flawed whatsoever. And we're going to see how this goes. And it is Cedar Point versus Canada's Wonderland. Here we go. To start off, I'm going to share my little point system here. What I do is I take rides from each park and I see which ones are easily comparable, and I put them head to head with each other, and for each ride that is better, they get a point for the park. Then the next thing, how I judge parks, is by atmosphere, and whatever park has the better atmosphere gets a point. Another good judging point for ranking parks is their operations, and whichever park has the better operations, they also get a point. But since I only compare the comparable rides, there's also quite a few incomparable rides, and I give them a point for good rides and a half a point for bad and kiddie rides. And then I add up all the scores and we see who wins. So let's do this thing. To start off, the battle of the hypercoasters. We got Magnum XL200, a 1989 aerodynamics hypercoaster, versus Behemoth, the 2008 B&M hypercoaster. And both these rides are really good in their own way. Magnum gets some really fun, janky airtime, and Behemoth is smooth, it's floaty. It's probably my third favorite B&M hyper, and because of that, I gotta give it to Behemoth. I know some of y'all are Magnum lovers, and you probably put Magnum ahead of Behemoth if you've done them both. But me personally, I prefer a B&M hyper to the Aero hyper. Magnum, again, don't get me wrong, it's really fun, but Behemoth is what I think it's better. I think Behemoth is better. I've been on both. I've ridden them multiple times, and I'd say Behemoth is the superior hypercoaster. And going up from hypercoaster, we got the Giga coasters. We have Millennium Force, the very first. We just had the very first hyper. Now we have the very first Giga, the 2000 Intamin Giga coaster, Millennium Force, versus Leviathan, the 2012 B&M Giga coaster. And again, I'm gonna have to go with the B&M here. I'm giving it to Leviathan. These two are both firsts for the manufacturers, but in my opinion, I think Leviathan is a more dynamic roller coaster than Millennium Force. They're very close in ranking, but I think Leviathan does have the edge. It did more for me whenever I rode it, and so I got to give it to Leviathan. But again, Millennium Force, still a great ride, and it is an absolute legend in the coaster world. Next up, it's the battle of the B&M dives. Two of the biggest B&M dives. They're about to get dwarfed by Tormenta, but currently we have the tallest and the second tallest B&M dive coaster. And to start off, Cedar Point's dive coaster is Valraven, the 2016 B&M dive coaster, and it's going up against Yukon Striker, the 2019 B&M dive coaster. And again, Canada's Wonderland, if you're keeping track, that's another point. That's point number 3 for Canada's Wonderland. I'm not a huge fan of either of these rides. I'm not a huge fan of the dive coaster model. If you've watched my channel, you can probably figure that out. Maybe. I don't know if I've said that yet. But I don't like dive coasters that much. So it's just picking which one do I like better. And this year, I rode Valraven and Yukon Striker in the same week, actually. I did prefer Yukon Striker over Valraven, not by a whole lot, but I did prefer it. I thought that it actually pulled some forces, and I think Valraven is literally forceless. So there we go. There's my reasoning, and that is point number 3 for Yukon Striker. And now, this is probably the closest one in my opinion, for just out of goodness. The last one is probably close out of my dislike, but we have the 2007 Intamin Blitz coaster Maverick versus the 2025 Premier Rides LSM multi-launch coaster Alpen Fury. Maverick is a awesome ride. It is an awesome ride. It is a trailblazer. It showed you that height doesn't really matter. It's all about the layout, and bang, is that layout insane. But Alpen Fury, these two coasters are in my top 25. I'm just saying it. These two coasters are in my top 25, which I can't say about any of the other coasters on this list. These two are incredible coasters, and I have to give the edge to Maverick. I know it's crazy, but if it wasn't for Maverick, would we have Alpen Fury? You could say maybe, maybe not, but I do prefer Maverick. That second launch on Maverick is probably better than anything on Alpen Fury. It is my favorite launch, especially at night. It is just, it's insane. So that's why I give Maverick the point, and Cedar Point gets a point now. Finally, it's about dang time. And now we're on to the ancient loopers. We got Corkscrew, a 1976 Aero Corkscrew, versus Dragonfire, a 1981 Aero Corkscrew, technically. And I'm giving the edge to Dragonfire. I did not ride Dragonfire whenever I went to Canada's Wonderland. I mostly prioritized the big rides because I didn't have that much time, and I was absolutely tired. I had to wake up at 2 a.m. to take the drive to Canada that day. Whoo! Was that that was a day. Okay. But I'm assuming Dragonfire has a longer layout and a more creative layout, so that is why I'm giving Dragonfire the point, even though they both probably suck. If I'm checking that, that gives 4 points to Canada's Wonderland and 1 point for Cedar Point. Okay, now it's time for the battle of the inverted looping coasters. And we have Raptor, the 1994 B&M invert at Cedar Point, versus Canada's Wonderland's Flight Deck, the 1995 Vekoma SLC. And I don't think it needs to be said, but Flight Deck does not get the win. It's actually Raptor. Raptor is my third favorite B&M invert, and Flight Deck is currently my least favorite roller coaster. So yeah, and it's pretty obvious what we're working with here. I mean, Raptor, intense, awesome layout, creative, all the inversions hit. That helix at the end literally makes my feet numb. That's how intense it is. And Flight Deck just gave me a headache. So, come on, what? Come on, I mean, janky track, terrible restraints. It's just an overall, it's ugly. It's just a bad ride. And my last video I said they need to tear it out and replace it. So, yeah, there we go. That's why I got Raptor ahead of it. Didn't need to be said. But you know what? You're watching my video, so I'll give you something. Okay, this one is kind of, what are you doing here? But the old, like, I don't know what this comparison would be. I just felt like having more in there, and so it's Gemini versus Wild Beast. Gemini, a 1978 Aero Mine Train, versus Wild Beast, a 1981 wooden coaster. And I'm giving it to Gemini. I hear bad things about Wild Beast. I heard it's rougher than I don't even know. So obviously I'm giving it to Gemini. I don't really know what to call this category. Like old, like just kind of wooden coaster for Gemini, and then old wooden coaster for Wild Beast. I don't know. Cedar Point doesn't really have wooden coasters, so here, I'm left, but Canada's Wonderland has 2, so what am I supposed to do? And I thought Gemini looked closer to Wild Beast than Blue Streak did to Mindbuster, which is, oh yeah, Cedar Point gets a point here. So that gives Cedar Point 3 points to Canada's Wonderland's 4. Yeah, and now we're on to, I already spoiled it, but Blue Streak, a 1964 PTC wooden coaster, versus Mindbuster, another 1981 wooden coaster. And again, Blue Streak does get the point here. I really like Blue Streak. In the comments of the last video, y'all were like, no, please, save Gemini, which I respect. I respect y'all who like Gemini, but personally, I prefer Blue Streak. So that's why I'm giving Blue Streak the edge. I also did not ride Mindbuster or Wild Beast because my dad was with me, and he doesn't really like wooden coasters, and I know these two have a reputation, so I was not going to put my dad through that. I put my dad through Flight Deck. He didn't need to go through more pain. But I'm giving Blue Streak the point here. I prefer that layout to Gemini, and I like Blue Streak. So, and I figure I might not like Mindbuster. I don't know. Who knows? I didn't ride it, but whatever. Okay. That gives Cedar Point, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4 points to Cedar Point, and 4 to Canada's Wonderland. And now it's the battle of the Arrow suspended coaster. And it is Iron Dragon, the 1987 suspended coaster from Cedar Point, versus Vortex, the 1991 Arrow suspended coaster from Canada's Wonderland. I've never ridden Iron Dragon, even though I've been to Cedar Point twice. But come on, it's mid. I'd rather marathon as best as you can, literally anything else at Cedar Point than get one ride on Iron Dragon, even for the credit. Yeah, and then Vortex is a clone of my baby, the Bat, at Kings Island, and it is probably more intense. It is actually more intense than the Bat. It was absolutely crazy, and you almost went upside down whenever you hit the brake run because you swung all the way up. It was nuts. But I am giving the point to Vortex. From what I hear, Iron Dragon's more of kind of family oriented, and it looks pretty sluggish and slow whenever I've seen it off ride. And Vortex was not that. So, obviously, Vortex gets the point here. Okay, finally, the battle of the Wild Mice. And it is Wild Mouse at Cedar Point versus Fly at Canada's Wonderland. I did not ride Fly because why would I ride a stupid mock Wild Mouse? I had ridden 3 other mock Wild Mice coasters this year, and I was not going to wait another long, I don't even know how long the line would have been. I saw a lot of it waiting for Alpen Fury, but I did not ride Fly. But it is I've literally ridden a clone of it, so why would I ride it? And I did ride Wild Mouse though, and Wild Mouse is getting the point. It's not your traditional Wild Mouse, and it's a spinny, so it's spinny, spins, and it's nice and it's fun for the whole gang. I think I did get the cheese car, so boom, take that. Okay. And that leaves the parks tied up, 5 each. Oh boy, what's gonna happen? Who knows? And now it's on to Atmosphere. Okay. On to Atmosphere. I went to both of these parks. Both these parks are really cool, but both these parks are terribly crowded. Oh my gosh. Can't stand so many people at a park at one time. It is disgusting, and it takes away, and you just can't maneuver, and the lines are long. And both these parks, I went on a weekday. I went on a Monday to Cedar Point, and that Wednesday, I went to Canada's Wonderland, and it was jam-packed at both those parks, and awful. But to give the Atmosphere, I'm giving the point to Canada's Wonderland. That gives Canada Wonderland 6 points. Come on, Wonder Mountain. The front entrance is beautiful with the Wonder Mountain and Eye Street and the big fountain. It's beautiful. There's not a ton of just blacktop in the park, so that also adds to it. It was just a beautiful atmosphere. If it wasn't as crowded as it was, which I doubt it ever gets that way, it probably would be like elite, but it was terribly crowded, so I don't think it's the best atmosphere. But looks wise, it looks really cool. Cedar Point, you just got a lot of rides plopped down. You are surrounded by a lake, which is really cool, but you're just there for the coasters. You could care less about how it looks if you're at Cedar Point, and if you've been there, you know that. Okay, so that is a 1 point for Canada's Wonderland, making that 6 Canada's Wonderland, 5 Cedar Point. And now on to operations. This is probably, actually, no, you already see. I go rides, atmosphere, operations, and that's how I rank my parks. And so now operations, see who gets the point. Will it tie up, or will Canada's Wonderland try to take a sweep here? They're going to tie up. I give the operation points to Cedar Point. Neither of these parks have the best operations, but neither of these parks have the worst operations. From my experience, I just thought the operations at Cedar Point were better, so that is why they're getting the point. They're nothing, like, they're not horrible, but they're not great, and so they're pretty equal. But I'd say Cedar Point's just a little bit better. Don't ask me to explain. That's how I felt. Okay, now it's time for incomparable rides. Just to reiterate, I give 1 point for each good ride and a half a point for all the bad and kids rides. And I came to a total. Cedar Point, they had stuff like Steel Vengeance hanging around. They had stuff like Top Thrill 2 hanging around, and Siren's Curse hanging around. They had stuff like Gatekeeper, Cedar Creek Miner. They had stuff like that hanging around that really couldn't be compared. So that's why I give. So Cedar Point gets 6.5 extra points, bringing their grand total to 12.5. And Canada's Wonderland, they didn't really have a lot left over. Their good stuff was really what was being compared with Cedar Point. So that kind of hurt them, but they still managed to get 5 extra points, bringing their grand total to 11. Yay! You know what that means. Who's the winner? Drum roll. Cedar Point! Hooray! Cedar Point wins. By my metrics, that means Cedar Point is the better park. And I probably agree with that. They're probably neck and neck. But yes, Cedar Point, congratulations. If you even need more reason to brag, you just won my meaningless ranking system, my versus. Congratulations. The winner of Versus Episode 1 is Cedar Point. I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And if you subscribe, you get to see more of my videos. I post every single Friday at like 1 p.m. if I remember. But it's usually Friday. It's always Friday. But the timing may be different. Try to get it at 1. But that's besides the point. So again, hope you enjoyed the video as much as I did making it. Stay tuned and peace out.